Today, we're talking all about consistency. So consistency is a superpower when trying to build a brand. It's important to note you don't own your brand. Your brand is people's perception of you. And this is influenced by all the touch points that they have with you. So these touch points are things that quite often you own. So things like your brand identity, your tone of voice, your messaging, etc. And all of these can then influence how people perceive your brand, the reputation that you've got. And I genuinely believe, consistency in your marketing is one of the top ways to build your brand. Consistency in most things in life, whether that's, going to the gym, relationships, whatever it is, if you talk about the gym, it's not about going once and going really, really hard. It's about being consistent, going regularly and small steps forward. So few little bits of stats. So it roughly takes 5 to 7 brand interactions for someone to recall a brand. Now, the reason then that consistency is important is they need to know that each of those interactions are actually from your brand. If everything looks different, if there's no consistent message, if the visuals are all over the place, they might not actually attribute that interaction to your brand. And therefore, they're not going to remember you. So really important that actually all the interactions are consistent. And good news for anyone wanting a bit more money in the bank, 23% increase in companies' revenue for those who have consistent branding. Just got Kate joining us. So just see if she's coming in. Hopefully so. Morning, Kate. If so, we're literally only just getting started. So, why does consistent branding increase companies' revenue? Well, it could be something along the lines of repeat purchase because people, get to know you and trust you. It could be a higher perceived value, so you're a premium brand. And we generally trust people who show up consistently. Yeah. So if your brand shows up consistently in every touch point, like I said, in visuals, in tone, in imagery, then people are much more likely to trust you. So consistency, which is what we're talking about today, we're going to be talking about some messaging. We're going to be talking about visual consistency. We're going to be talking about your voice, your tone of voice, but also your service, your delivery. So consistency in message. Well, when you've got one simple message, it doesn't confuse. Yeah. It's, I often put this down to building a relationship. If one day you're really nice, next horrible, it's confusing, isn't it? And that's not the sort of partner we want. You need a message that's consistent. And secondly, what gets repeated gets remembered. Yeah. So in your marketing message, you might find new ways of saying it, but you need to keep repeating the same thing. The reason we revise is that generally it doesn't go in first time. We have to keep repeating it to ourselves. So while you might think, I'm getting bored of saying the same thing, actually for other people, it probably isn't boring. They probably weren't actually listening first time. And anyone who goes, regular networking will know you quite often get up, say the same thing. And, I've heard it where sort of 2 years later, someone comes, oh yeah, you do that, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I have been saying the same thing for 2 years, but it's only just clicked with them because it was on their radar that, they needed your product or your service. And if I look at my sort of social media and the videos that I put out, I've done a few hundred now, probably 4, maybe even 500 now. They're all generally around the same thing. The message is similar. I just find different ways to say it. So whatever your marketing message is, make sure that it's a clear message. You're saying the same thing to the same person, and keep repeating it. And it builds trust. Yeah, consistency builds trust. And we trust things that deliver the same service. And we're talking about service delivery, but in every touch point, it needs to be repeated. 81% of consumers need to trust a brand to consider buying from it. I don't know what the other 19% do, but taking a punt on saying online, I guess. But we generally like to trust the brands we work with. So we now start to look on to visual identity and how you can be consistent here. Now, it's probably the easiest one to do because actually just making sure you use the same font, the same colors, the same logo, same type of imagery. And you can start to put that together. Now, the reason this is important is that 55% of brands' first impressions are visual. So when someone first comes across your company, they will be forming an impression of it straight away. Like I say, you might think you have the best brand ever, but someone will form an impression of you within, under a second. So whether it's, you're Simon and Van, or you're wearing a uniform, or whether it's just their first interaction with your website, or any other online marketing, it needs to represent you, how you want to be perceived, because someone will form an opinion on that. So you need to make sure that actually your identity matches the target audience that you're looking to appeal to. And when you start to build this strong brand, brands end up getting recognized just simply by some colors or simply by some shapes. And you can see this, I've thrown this up on screen. I think we all know what brand that is. It doesn't even say it, but we're starting to recognize what's going on purely based on the colors and the visual tone. We've just got someone else coming in. See if I can get them in. Brilliant. So, and again, let's have a little look through. Like these posters, you just know they're Coke because of the consistent use of colors. And don't get me wrong, their marketing budget is massive, but it does prove the point that by having that consistent visual identity, you don't even need to write your company name on there. And I saw this, I saved this. This was back in the Olympics, Audi taking Lidl in, saying, "You look great." Just those colors, Lidl use those colors constantly. And even when they're seen in something completely unrelated within gymnastics, not even their logo, I think it's a Romanian gymnast, but she's wearing the colors of Lidl. And it was a great post by Audi, who are really good at their social medias. But it just, again, shows consistent use of color means you get remembered for that look. So where should you have consistent visuals? Well, your social media platforms, things like profile pictures across all of the different platforms, the fonts on images and adverts, again, make sure it's the same on posters. I mentioned vans and uniform. It needs to be a consistent look. Every touch point, they should know it's you without actually reading it's you. I don't know. I just thought of this. Do you remember there was a game, or probably going back 10 years, on a phone where it was almost like you had to say what the logo was, and it was based on just the visual. There was no name on it, but it was amazing how many you could recognize without the name because it was consistent. So if I talk about sort of logos actually and consistency, Facebook are really good at this, as in you can actually go onto their site and download their entire logo pack. And they also tell you how it should be used. So if it's on white, it's literally the blue. Same if you're putting it on an image, it's like this. They are saying this is how we want our identity to be used. And it's got a few other examples as well. Occasionally transparent, that's fine, and that's the secondary expression. But as well as telling you how to use it, it tells you how not to use it. They're really protective of their brand. And you should do this on your stuff so that you can send your brand identity to any sort of designer and say, put me together a poster, and it's going to look in the same way. It doesn't have to be as complex as Facebook. For Brand Growth Academy, we've got this very simple sheet that just says what colors, what fonts. And it means anyone can design something and it's going to look consistent because we use those colors and those fonts. So 71% of people say that an inconsistent brand presentation creates confusion. And it is true. We need to know what brands stand for, and visual, we're visual creatures. We see things and we create our own perception of something based on what we've seen. So we've covered messaging, we've covered consistency. Now we're going to talk about voice. And what is the tone of voice? Well, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. Okay, so when you're putting together your marketing, when you're putting together your social media, and we're seeing a lot of this actually with people, or a lack of this with maybe people using AI just to write all of their social posts. Now, I might do a presentation on AI at some point because you need to train it to speak in your voice. because everyone's starting to sound the same, and you can certainly almost see those corporate buzzwords slipping into everyone's posts because they're just using AI to write it. But to give some examples, if you received an email offering a discount, yeah, we're pleased to offer you a 20% discount on your next purchase. Yep, that sounds right. They're grammatically correct. It all looks good. I would say that's the sort of thing Marks and Spencer's would write. Yep, we're pleased to offer you a 20% discount on your next purchase. It sounds, I could almost say it in an M&S voice, and it would come across right. Whereas if I received this, good news, you can snag 20% off your next order with us. That email's come from ASOS or some company like that. It's, again, still offering a 20% discount, but the way it's presenting it is slightly different. So looking at the tone of voice that you use, and finally, actually there's a couple more here. Get ready to save, enjoy 20% off your next buy. I'd say it's probably more like Tesco's, maybe. And then another one, to show our appreciation, we're giving you a 20% discount on your next purchase. Yeah, maybe a John Lewis. So for those just joining me, I'll just quickly flick through those, just talking about consistency in your tone of voice, and how actually it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. And different companies have different tone of voices. And that's where, I'd caution against just using AI without training it, at least, on your tone of voice, because if you're M&S, you're going to be saying, we're pleased to offer you a 20% discount on your next purchase. If you're ASOS, actually, you're probably a tone a little bit more like this. You can snag 20% off. And there's a few others. There's the Tesco's and what I'd probably say John Lewis. So 94% of brands or customers recommend brands they connect with emotionally. And we generally connect emotionally with people when they are like us. So I would say use a voice like your ideal customer. Yeah. So speak their language, listen to them. How do they speak? And therefore, to create your tone around that. You've probably seen quite a few of the social media posts where it's like, what is it, Gen Z writes the marketing script and they have a slightly older person presenting it. And yeah, it doesn't sort of go, it's sort of like the British Museum saying that things were slay, and talking like my daughter. The voice needs to match who your ideal customer are. But there have been some fun uses of switching that up. But best way, look at your ideal customer. What language do they use? How do they speak? Therefore, speak their language so that you connect with them. So the final one today, we're going to be looking at service. Now, getting a customer is actually only half the battle. Good marketing can be let down if the service doesn't match. Marketing, and I work in marketing, but, we have a great habit of making everything look brilliant and shiny and it's going to be amazing. And then if the service is let down or lets that down, actually you almost feel worse because, it's like being, promised that 5-star chef cooked meal and you turn up and it's actually just a meal deal from Tesco's. The expectation doesn't meet the reality. Consistency is really key here. So I often say, who makes the best burgers in the world? Well, probably not McDonald's, but who sells more burgers than anyone else? McDonald's, because you know what you're getting. And it's the same when we all land in a new city or a new town. Actually, we might go with.
It's going to finish in a minute. It's really useful though.
Just going to mute someone. There we go. So yeah, we might choose a Starbucks or a Costa or something that we know, even though there might be a little independent that actually would probably deliver a really good cup. It's just actually maybe we don't want to take the risk. We want to go with something we know. Consistency. And I often tell this story where I did a load of work with BT Business, and they've changed it around now. But they had a stat which was calling the help desk to solve a problem was actually 5 times more likely to make someone leave than the actual issue, and that was because it wasn't the problem that someone was encountering. It was being phoned up and they got passed from pillar to post and moved around. And then someone else said they'd be out. Oh, yeah, we'll get someone out to you tomorrow. And no one turned up. That part let the rest of the brand down. And they've worked on that now. I know they have. But it just showed that actually people weren't leaving because of the product or service. It was because of the almost service delivery when something went wrong. So make sure every touch point that someone has is consistent. And this is a really important stat. 86% of job seekers read company reviews before applying for a job. So if you think delivering a great service is just important for, people leaving reviews that you can win new customers, it's also really important when you're trying to recruit, because getting good staff is hard. You don't want to make it harder for yourself by having bad reviews. People generally want to work for companies that they feel connected with and they feel are doing a good job. It always amazes me how people, if they treat their staff badly and then wonder why they're getting bad customer reviews. Well, generally, your team will treat your customers like you treat them. So look after your staff, therefore they look after your customers. Customers leave great reviews, and then therefore you're much more likely to be able to recruit even better staff. So a little checklist for today. Make sure you've got a defined marketing message and that it's consistent. Talk about it over and over and over again. Say the same thing, repeat, so that people understand it. Your visual identity document, just have a very simple one, based around what logo should be used, where, what font, what colors, what spacing needs to be added, so that if anyone else puts something together for you, it still looks like your brand. Define your tone of voice. Like I say, the best way to do this, listen to your ideal customer. Yep. How do they speak? What sort of things do they say? And then make sure that actually you're speaking to them because they want to feel like you're one of them, and you connect via that by speaking the same way. And processes for delivery of service. Just make sure every single touch point is really clear, and that is how you can implement consistency within your marketing.